Hey YouTube, it's Mark.
And Rocky.
And we are
This Cruise Life.
We are coming to you here from the Norwegian Sky.
That's right, we want to share with you everything that happened over the last 9 days on this 25-year-old ship.
We're going to tell you everything we loved,
what we didn't love,
and what we hated. So stick around. As you know, we always start out with the positives in our review, and this is no exception. However, I do want to point out that the Norwegian Sky had a lot of opportunities, and we're going to talk about those after this section.
Right, so in traditional This Cruise Life fashion, let's start by talking about the food, starting with the local. This was a great pub-like atmosphere and space. You could tell it's been redone when they refit the ship in 2019. We loved this space. They had some of our favorite meals, like the Reuben.
My fish and chips, my chili. I loved the local on the Encore and loved it here on board the Sky. I also loved lunch in the main dining room on sea days. That was a great menu, and it was just nice to sit down and get away from the buffet.
Right, and speaking of lunch, La Cucina. We met some people who didn't even know La Cucina was open for lunch 8 days into the cruise.
Don't miss it.
Right, we were able to enjoy some pizza. They had some Thai ramen bowls.
The beef ramen, the chicken
so
ramen. It was a delicious option for lunch.
And then on the buffet, they also had a pretty decent sized salad bar where you could get all of your fixins and toppings and just build a beautiful salad.
And I loved how many Indian dishes that they had available. Now, they didn't always have them on the buffet, but they had a sign that said, hey, if you'd like Indian dishes, you can request it. It was about a 5 to 7 minute wait, but I did not have a single Indian dish that I didn't absolutely love.
That's great. And while we're still talking about the buffet area, there was also ice cream service. Now, it was cool because they actually had an employee that was scooping the ice cream for you, so you didn't have to worry about touching sticky tongs and everything else. And it was great. They had soft serve as well as multiple different ice cream flavors.
And the soft serve was also served to you, which I actually really liked. There were no piles of ice cream anywhere. There were no spills or cones on the floor. It was just, I like that touch.
It was nice.
The last thing I will talk about in the included food section is the main dining room on debark morning. We had a lovely, relaxed breakfast. The eggs were good and all of the sides were yummy. I recommend this option to just get away from the chaos of the crowds and just enjoy your final breakfast on board.
That was great. Now let's talk about the upcharge dining options on board the Norwegian Sky. We actually had the free at sea package with our booking, and so we actually used that free at sea dining at Cagney Steakhouse. Stay tuned till the end of the video to find out what didn't go so well at Cagney's.
Now, I am so thankful that we purchased 2 additional meals through their, upsell package pre-cruise, because we used those at Le Bistro and La Cucina. Now, I had already eaten at Le Bistro on the Encore, so I knew what I was in for. It was delicious. We loved it. And then La Cucina is their Italian version. Now, on the Encore, they've got the newer concept Onda by Scarpetta. I will tell you, La Cucina blew Onda out of the water. It was so much better than that experience was. Loved it. Turns out, you don't always need a celebrity chef to put his name against a restaurant to make it better food. I'm telling you, La Cucina was worth every penny.
Right, and even though we didn't have a celebrity chef, we still had a celebrity server. Our server at La Cucina was amazing. Milka took great care of us. When she saw us up on the Lido the next day in the buffet, she actually stopped us and said, like and subscribe. And honestly, the specialty restaurants on board, they had some great presentation of their food dishes. They were beautiful.
Look at this. It's gorgeous.
It is.
Oh my gosh. Now, is specialty dining worth it overall on Norwegian Sky? We're actually going to take that out of this review and put together a little quick video to talk to you and show you all of the food we ate, all of the menus, all of that good stuff. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button.
Yes. So that's it for the food. Let's start talking about those drinks on board.
Once again, I loved my Buena Vista styled Irish coffee. You could get it at the local, and we drank a bunch of those there. You could also get it in the main dining room. Now, despite other bars having coffee machines, we were told that they couldn't make them. So that's okay. We went to the local or we got it in the main dining room, and it was always delicious.
It was so good. Now, speaking of drinks, we had free at sea, which included our beverages across the sailing. And I will tell you, we did not go thirsty. We found quite a few beverages that we enjoyed, from the Bushwhacker The lemon drop martinis.
Yep. I loved there was a pineapple coconut drink at Sugarcane, the mojito bar on board. There was also the pineapple surplus that was at multiple bars around the ship. I liked that. I just loved the convenience of free at sea. Not having to worry, going up to any bar and ordering any soda or drink and not having to worry about that.
Right. And Mark was talking about this Gin 66 from the Encore, and I was so excited to get to try it.
Yep.
When we were up in Spinnaker, they gave us a couple of sips of that, and it was really tasty. I was impressed.
Highly recommend the Norwegian 66 gin. Very tasty. Speaking of Spinnaker, we
Yeah.
loved that space. John, our bartender,
He was
took
amazing.
such great care of us, and we just loved the space.
We did. We recorded a video about that secret space in the forward where you can go outside and really just enjoy being close to the ocean and having the sea air. It was great. We loved Spinnaker.
And while we didn't have the Starbucks package this time, like I did on the Encore, I loved how every time I walked by Starbucks, there wasn't a single line. It didn't matter if it was daytime, if it was afternoon or evening. I would have gotten my money's worth had I purchased that package because there was never really anyone there at that Starbucks.
It's true.
That's the drinks. Let's jump on in and talk about the
Entertainment.
One party not to be missed is the glow party up on Lido Deck. Oh my goodness, they did face painting a la Virgin Voyages, and they were so generous with their glow sticks and the lighted wands. It gave some of those other 80s parties up on Lido Deck a run for their money.
So much fun. Now, the theater on board, Stardust Lounge, was a gorgeous space, very large, ample seating. We were able to arrive for the shows 15 minutes before showtime and still were able to sit up in the front. It was great. And thanks to Mark sailing with Norwegian previously, we were invited to the welcome back party. It was great getting to meet the officers of the vessel and getting our pictures and just chatting with them.
Cruise tip, that bar is open, so you don't just have to take the drinks on the trays that they bring around. You can go up. That's how we tried several Norwegian 66 gins, and it was delicious.
Yes.
And I loved the Broadway-style show that they did in the Bliss Lounge on that first sea day.
It was awesome. And we went to the Newlywed Not So Newlywed game show. So much fun. If you've been to any of those newlywed style shows on any other cruise line, you know you're in for a treat.
So we loved a lot of things about the entertainment. Now let's talk about the design of the ship and the things we loved there. We were not sure what to expect with a 25-year-old vessel, but I will tell you the Norwegian Sky shows beautifully. Thanks to a refit that they did in 2019 where they gutted the ship, brought in new venues, overhauled all of the staterooms. She looks like a new cruise ship. I couldn't believe it. We loved that part of the design.
Right, and that design started off in the terminal building. Norwegian has built this beautiful new terminal building. They played homage to several of their previous ships that have sailed under Norwegian Cruise Lines. They had models and historical facts. It was so cool.
Super cool. And once you got on the ship, there were unique spaces for lounging out about the ship. The library, for example, it was the largest library I have seen at sea. I couldn't believe that they didn't rip this out during dry dock and put an upcharge venue in there, but I loved that space and it was just quiet to get away from the crowds.
Right, and speaking of places to lounge about on the ship, there was so much open deck space up on the top decks of the ship. There was a huge pool area with a couple of hot tubs. Now, what I will say is the ship was lacking some additional activities such as mini golf and water slides. We'll get to that towards the end of the video.
And that's really, the pools were the highlight of that top deck because it didn't have those other spaces. So keep that in mind.
Yes.
One space that we loved the size of was the gym. There was so much equipment in this space and so much area to actually work out. Now, we did hear from some friends that early in the morning it got really busy, but we didn't experience that because we didn't go to the gym. So that's probably why, but we loved how much space there was for those that do want to work out on vacation.
Right. And you can tell that the ship's dry dock introduced all new bathrooms across the vessel. They have been redone, they're modern, they're very nice and spacious. All of the equipment actually worked on this ship. It was great. The bathrooms were wonderful spaces.
Yeah. Now, I wish they would have been introduced post that COVID, swipe to open. You did have to touch the doors to open them, but thankfully the paper towels dispensers worked on the Sky compared to the Encore.
Right.
I also absolutely loved our stateroom. They completely, as I mentioned, gutted it and redid it. Really, we did have some struggle with storage in the interior space. We had to figure out some strategic places to put stuff, but I will tell you overall that stateroom felt new. It felt fresh. It felt just, I really loved it. In fact, it's one of my favorite staterooms we've stayed in. It was quiet the entire time. Now the bathroom is old. They've updated it and refreshed it, but it's got that old circular shower with the curtain. But I loved it. And in the bathroom, they had a hand soap dispenser. So you didn't have all of those, single-use soaps. You just had a hand soap dispenser. Loved that as well.
Now, on a 9-day cruise, we had a lot of ports of call, and it was great how efficient they were with the debark and embark process at each of the ports. We usually weren't the first ones getting off of the ship, so that may have played into it, but we never had to wait when we wanted to get off the ship or get back on. They also introduced the Smile and Go technology on the ship, which was the first time we've ever seen that.
In port,
on the ship. It was really cool. Now, we didn't love it as much because it wasn't as efficient as actually scanning our cards, but it was still cool to see the technology in use.
It was. And the last thing that I'll mention in the design of the ship that we loved was the wraparound deck on deck 6. We've seen these decks on other ships and we love them. We've told you, take your pictures there, watch your sunsets there. It was actually where the jogging track was. So you could go the entire wraparound of deck 6. The aft of the ship was another, I call it a secret space because there was never anyone there watching the wake of the ship. Absolutely loved that space to get away from the crowds.
It was great. Some of the miscellaneous things that we loved about the Norwegian Sky, starting with the boarding process. It was so smooth and efficient. As soon as we got onto the ship, they immediately sent us to the muster station, so that was done and over with, and then we could go off and enjoy the ship. It was so efficient.
Now, it backed up a couple of times. It did back up because they would go through the muster process and put a sticker on the card, but I loved that once we were on the ship, we didn't have to go back to our muster stations. Right. Great job, Norwegian Sky.
Yes.
And once you got on, if you carried on your bags, they had the bag check spot because rooms are not available. So you were able to check your bags and drop them off at Sugarcane Mojito Bar. They did that on the Encore and they did it again here. I love that. So you don't have to have people lugging their bags all around the ship until the rooms are ready.
Right. And let's talk about the itinerary for this sailing. It was amazing. We visited some of our favorite ports, San Juan, St. Martin, Antigua, St. Thomas. The list goes on. It was so much fun. And by the time we reached the end of the cruise, we had such a relaxed debark. It was so smooth, so easy. We ended up meeting with one of the concierges, Romaila, and she took care of our friends for us, getting them off the ship nice and quick and easy as well.
I'm not going to sound like a broken record here and tell you about relaxed debark, but relaxed debark, do it. I'm telling you, it was such a peaceful way to end the cruise.
It was.
And lastly, one of the things that I absolutely loved, honestly made my cruise, was one of those ports that we stopped in, which was new to both of us, and that was Great Stirrup Key. Oh, yes. It's Norwegian's private island. I will tell you, it's probably my new favorite private island I've been to. There was so much space to spread out. They have 160 acres, and that beach just went on and on and on. You could be in the party crowd, or you could just be by yourself in the ocean. It was great. They have a Bacardi themed bar, which we absolutely loved. They've got food trucks. They've got the buffet. The food trucks, Tropic Like It's Hot. I should have mentioned that in the food section. I loved Tropic Like It's Hot. It was some of the best food that we had on board the cruise. I was going to say the ship, but I guess on board the cruise, we loved the private island. A highlight for me from this cruise. If you have a chance to go to GSC, Great Stirrup Cay, check that place out. I think you'll enjoy it a lot.
Right. Well, that is a lot to love about the Norwegian Sky.
Yeah.
Let's start taking a look at what we didn't love about our sailing.
Starting with the food, I didn't love that aft buffet. I don't know if it was because it was outside and exposed to the elements, but all of the food on that buffet was dry. It felt like it had sat there for a period of time. Even the Indian dishes sitting in curry, they were dry. I didn't love that part of the food offering.
Right. And the times that you could actually dine were a little bit of a challenge. Breakfast stopped at 10:30, lunch started at 11:30. So in that hour of time lapse, you had to go hungry. There was nothing to dine. Same thing happened with dinner service. Dinner was actually done with service by 9:30, and after that, the only option was the local until 3 a.m. The local did not serve food 24 hours a day, so you really were limited on where you could go to find food.
And I didn't love that it wasn't even until 3 a.m. There were some nights that they just closed the bar down at 1, and it was over. I didn't love that part of the experience.
No, agreed.
Speaking of late night,
Yeah.
what didn't we have late night?
No pizza.
What? That's the first cruise I've been on where we could have paid $10 to get pizza through room service,
delivery.
but it was the first cruise that I've been on where I didn't have late night pizza access. I did not love that.
No, pizza is good for late night snacks.
Speaking of late night, there were some things we didn't love about the drinks, and I'm going to start that off with, I got so bored with that menu. It was the same menu at most all of the bars, and it was a limited menu. They told you, here are what's included in your drinks package. Now, you could, of course, order your own or call your own drinks, but you've heard us talk about this before, I like the unique drinks at different bars. Add 2 or 3 unique cocktails per bar so you just feel like you can drink around the ship, especially when you've got something like free at sea.
Oh, yeah. And while all of the bars had a tap where they could pour sodas for you if you wished to have a soda, they did not have Coke Zero, which was our soda of choice. They would have to crack open a can and pour it. Well, when we went up to the bars and ordered it, we would get 2 of them. 1 can would fill 2 glasses with ice for us to enjoy. Now, it's not a big deal, except when you start looking at the cost. $3.50 for 1 glass of soda. 1 can takes 2 glasses. That's $7 for 1 can of soda. That is a wild price.
Now, we didn't have to worry about it because we had free at sea, but had we been buying soda, several people have asked us, like, what is the soda price on board? It's like $7 a can. I mean, that's some inflation right there.
That is definite.
And remember, speaking of soda, Norwegian Cruise Lines does not allow you to bring a 12-pack of soda on board. So get ready for some expensive drinks.
Now let's jump into the entertainment and what we didn't love. Starting with, well, there just wasn't a lot of activities to do on board. We've been on other older, smaller ships, and there's always been a plethora of activities, mini golf and water slides. The Norwegian Sky didn't have that, so you saw kids bored. They were hanging out on the stairs trying to figure out what they were going to do.
We heard that from several cruisers that their kids were just bored out of their minds, which was a little bit sad. And honestly, there were a lot of musicians on board, and there was karaoke on board, and there was a lot of singing themed stuff on board, but that was pretty much the extent of the entertainment.
Right.
They did have some trivias, which we loved the trivias we went to, but it really felt like they were an afterthought. They were shoved in the corner of a bar. They set up a temporary stand for the trivia, and it didn't feel as fun maybe as some other brands. Now, maybe we're spoiled from Carnival, because I will tell you, the Fun Squad gets it right. This is where they shine the entertainment on board. We just kind of were bored on board Norwegian Sky.
Mark, you're right. There was a lot of singing on board. Even the stage shows, they didn't have props. They didn't have set changes. The performers just came out and sang their songs, and we had to vote. It was kind of strange. And then the second show, while it was a little bit better,
it was better.
We've seen better performances on other cruise lines, so there was a lot to be desired.
The shows were a little weak.
They were. And speaking of other shows that were on board, the Welcome Aboard show, well, we got to see who the officers were, and we got to meet the cruise director, and then there was a comedian that came up, and that was the extent of the Welcome Aboard show.
It was a PG show. It just was slow and kind of boring,
it was,
honestly.
It was.
And we love magicians on cruise ships. You know this about us. And the Norwegian Sky had a magician, but he didn't do magic. It was more of a comedy show. Several people that we talked to said, where was the magic?
Right.
It was enjoyable. People seemed to, enjoy the show, but there really wasn't a lot of magic. It was just a lot of comedy. I think he might have been funnier than the comedian.
I mean, honestly, I don't know what the show looked like because I was stuck on stage for most of it.
Rocky did get called up on stage. We couldn't take pictures, otherwise we'd put one right here for you. That was kind of a fun part, but again, even still, it was about comedy. It was not really about magic.
Right. Let's talk about what we didn't love about the design of the Norwegian Sky.
And that started right when we boarded. Walking into that atrium, it was just a meh feeling. There was no excitement. It was just white walls that they've painted clearly in the dry dock. It looks nice. It's clean. It's fresh. It just had no personality. It was just a white atrium. Now, good news, we didn't really spend any time there because there was nothing in the atrium to do, really.
Right. And then as we went up to the gym, the locker rooms are behind a paywall. So those are actually part of the spa experience, which also includes the saunas. not really our favorite thing, and everything was separated out. The gym was across the hallway from the locker rooms, and so you couldn't really use it.
So if you want to shower after your gym experience, get ready to pay a hefty fee to use that, or if you want to use the sauna or steam room, it's just disappointing.
Yes. Bringing it back to that atrium, there was some smoke bleed over from the casino.
Yeah.
It was not nice. Like when we walked through the casino, it actually wasn't bad, but when you got into the atrium, it just reeked of smoke.
Yeah, weird.
Horrible.
Didn't love that. Speaking of the places that you walk through, the nightclub was in this wide open space that you walked through as you went forward to aft. It's where they did like the art auction or the future cruise talk. It was just in this weird open space. I didn't love that.
No. And then when you got to the theater, which as I mentioned was a beautiful space, the layout of the space itself was very frustrating. Instead of having benches that are permanent fixtures within the theater, they have these swivel chairs. Well, if the swivel chair touches your neighbor's swivel chair and you turn, they turn with you. I had this happen to me several times, and it was really frustrating to experience.
The last thing I will mention in the design of the ship that we didn't love, and this was borderline hated, was the entrance from ports where you were funneled into this narrow hallway that also served as the elevator bank. And so everyone would stand waiting for the elevators, and you literally could not get through to the stairs because people were waiting for their elevator. And so you had to literally every time, while the embark and debark was smooth, once you got onto the ship, I don't know who designed this space, but it was a terrible design having to cut through the elevator bank, and it was a narrow bank that you had to cut through just to get back onto the ship.
Not great. Let's round out what we didn't love about the Norwegian Sky with a few miscellaneous items.
Started with that nickel and dime feeling that I had on Encore, and this time it started right in the terminal in Miami. Rocky brought a bottle of champagne over with him from Virgin Voyages. They'd gifted him a bottle of champagne, and security said, "Oh, you need to go check that." And we're like, well, but we're allowed to bring it on. And so we went over to the table, and they're like, there's a mandatory $15 corkage fee. What? We're just going to drink this in our room. We're not going to use your services. We're not going to use your glasses. No, doesn't matter. There's a $15 mandatory fee to bring champagne on board. So you can bring wine or champagne, but it's going to cost you. And so we said, well, we have the drinks package on board. And she's like, oh, well, if you have the drinks package, then it's included. She's like, but I need you to prove to me you have the drinks package. So I had to go into the email, find our reservation, show her the piece of paper. It was just, I just felt nickeled and dimed right from the start. And then, speaking of the terminal experience that I didn't love, I was taking some pictures of, it's a beautiful terminal. We loved the terminal. You heard us mention that. We couldn't take pictures or videos. We got yelled at from across the terminal. No pictures, no videos. And so everyone kind of looked at us and were like, what? I get it. You know, we always respect the rules of not taking pictures and videos through the, TSA-like style security area, of course. But this beautiful terminal that they've clearly invested millions of dollars in, the port workers yelled at us because we were trying to take pictures to share with you. I didn't love that experience boarding in Miami. It was frustrating.
Very. I was so frustrated that you couldn't access the Freestyle Daily Planner in advance. They released it 24 hours before the events would take place, which made it a challenge to schedule whatever reservations we wanted to create for our free at sea dining or the additional dining that we added onto our booking. And the spa pricing.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that spa pricing. If you wanted to do a couple's aromatic seaweed massage.
Speaking of nickel and diming.
Yeah. That massage was going to run you $599.
Well, and don't forget, plus the mandatory 20%
Oh, absolutely.
service
The
fee.
gratuities, right. It was a very expensive experience. Nevertheless, we did not experience anything from the spa.
Didn't love that. That does, though, wrap out the didn't love section. And now we are going to jump into the hated section. And there were several things that we absolutely hated about this experience.
Starting with the internet, we paid for an upgrade, almost $200 to have unlimited internet access, and it really didn't work for us. We ended up going down to the internet desk and worked with the crew there, and they said, yeah, there's been some changes, and what I can do is give you a partial credit and to try again later.
Absolutely hated. The worst internet that we've had at sea, with the exception of Celebrity Apex when the internet was down for the week.
Yeah.
It was one of the most frustrating parts of the experience on board.
It was.
Something else that we hated about the onboard experience was the amount of single-use plastic that Norwegian Cruise Lines has. Now, they tout that they are environmentally friendly and they're really focused on it, but then every time you turned around, there was single-use plastic. Whether it was plastic cups inside the venues, on the pool deck, single-use cups that we literally watched blow around on deck. Straw wrappers, straws, single-use, the creamers, single-use. Everywhere you looked, there was single-use in place. It's 2024. That was something that I hated about this experience.
Right. And earlier you mentioned pinch points coming onto the ship. Well, there was a really frustrating pinch point that we encountered in the buffet. When we would try to enter that space, if we didn't want to actually get in line to get food, or if the buffet was closed, we were routed to a bypass path, and there was a table with 2 chairs set up, and 9 times out of 10, someone was sitting there, so you could only have one person go through at a time. It was a really frustrating entrance to the buffet.
And don't forget, also at that entrance was the drink station,
right.
And also at the entrance was the ice cream station, and also at the entrance was the crepe station. And so it ended up all of the time there were people backed out onto the Lido, and if you wanted to get back to the local or to the aft bar or to the aft grill, again, you had to make your way past that little table and all of these people. We said it on board, it was probably the stupidest design we have ever seen on a cruise ship.
And this might sound like a nit, but the placement of the shampoo and the soap in the shower was really low, and it was blocked by the cabling for the shower head. It was just a really bad design.
It was a poor design.
Yeah.
Hated that. The last night of the cruise, we hated the fact there was a big fight in the nightclub. Now, this can happen on any ship. We thought Norwegian, we would get away from some of that, but it turns out happens there too. We hated that. But what I really would say I hated was the fact that there was no security in the nightclub. Literally, the bartender had to leave the bar, call for security backup, and it was several minutes before the first security officer showed up. Where was security, and why was someone not stationed in the nightclub where everyone is drinking and dancing? It was that I hated, and I did not understand where security was.
Right. And the last thing that we'll talk about in the hated section is
This was the big one.
The big one. Our final meal on board was dinner at Cagney Steakhouse. Service in here was anything but good. The timing was delayed. The food was mediocre. Overall, hated Cagney Steakhouse.
You know, we talked to the maitre d'. So for those who are like, well, did you talk to someone? Yes, we talked to the maitre d' and we said, hey, it's been 45 minutes. We still don't have bread service. Meanwhile, other sections have already finished their appetizers. It was just something went wrong. And so then the maitre d' kept coming over and telling us, don't worry, if he doesn't bring you your bread soon, we're going to fire him. Don't worry, he knows he's on his best behavior now. And the maitre d' actually made the experience even worse somehow. It felt every single time that another dish would come out, he would come over and be like, see, I told you, now he's on his best behavior. He's watching himself.
Yeah.
And then things were wrong. It was a terrible way to end that final meal. It was almost 3 hours that we sat at Cagney's Steakhouse. Now, I didn't love my experience at Cagney's on board Encore either, so I don't know if this is just a trend for Cagney's. We've talked to people that love it, but we hated this experience on board.
Yes. That is everything that we loved, what we didn't love, and what we hated about our experience on board the Norwegian Sky. Reflecting back on the 9-night cruise, I really struggle with how things went over the entirety of our sailing. From the food challenges, to the mediocre drinks, to some of the entertainment that was lacking. I'm afraid to say this, but I feel like this sailing earned 2.5 ships. Mark, where does it land for you?
This was the first cruise that I've ever been on where I said to Rocky, I just want to get off the ship. There was so much that didn't go right this cruise. That internet, honestly, was the most frustrating thing that I've experienced. Right, we tried to share, we tried to post, and when they shared with us, just try again later, like, it was frustrating. The Cagney's experience was frustrating. The lack of food options, and the food was just, the buffet was just okay at best.
Yeah.
We were a little bored throughout the sailing. Now, we knew going in that it was an older ship and that there wasn't a mini golf and there wasn't all of these things. So it wasn't that, but we've been on plenty of older ships where we've enjoyed the entertainment, we've enjoyed all of those sorts of things. It just was not my favorite cruise. In fact, it was the first cruise that I said, I just want to get off the ship.
Right.
And so based on that, I'm between, honestly, I'm between 1.5 and 2 ships. I didn't love the Norwegian Sky. I hate to say that. I really do. There was a lot to love. We agree. There's a lot to love.
There is.
But there was just so much that didn't go right this sailing. It's the first time that we've ever said that I don't know that I would choose to rebook this cruise again.
While our scores were low for this ship, we always share the disclaimer that your experience may vary.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for a very relaxed and easygoing environment, Norwegian Sky might be the right ship for you. If you're looking for that small environment where you don't have a large ship that you have to navigate your way around, Norwegian Sky might be right for you.
And if it is the perfect itinerary like it was for us, I don't know that I would, actually. I don't know. I would look for this itinerary probably on a different ship, honestly. That's me being, we've always said on this channel, we would be 100% honest with you, and that is me being 100% honest with you. I loved the itinerary, but I did not love that experience.
Right. So that takes us to the end of today's video. If you liked this video, if you found things that you enjoyed or learned about the Norwegian Sky, give this video a thumbs up.
And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, all of those things. The last thing I do want to mention is, as I said, we loved a lot on this ship. I think what honestly we loved the most about this ship and what really helped make this cruise, helped salvage a lot of some of the struggles we had with this cruise are the people that we met on board. We met so many amazing new friends.
We really did. And because it's a small ship, we saw them frequently.
Everywhere, even in ports, we got to see them. It was that, honestly, we love you, all of the new followers, all of the new friends that we made. It was a ton of fun. Glad that we got to experience this with you. And for those of you that also had some challenges or experienced some issues that we've talked about, sorry. I promise you there is a ship and a cruise line experience that is for you out there.
Right. Well, until we see you out on the next video, we'll see you out on the seas.